takes place at a party at the Woodhouses. And Emma is kind of put out because Mrs. Elton is just like taking over the conversation and doesn't speak to her. Emma feels this is kind of rude, but the two of them have been rude to each other for a while now. So, this is just sort of the way things are. But Mrs. Elton is concerned with getting Jane a position. So, as I said, we have this sort of social hierarchy thing going. And so Jane doesn't really have money, doesn't really have the ability to marry well. But she has skills and she has beauty and she has talent and she's a hard worker and she's nice. So Mrs. Elton is like, I can get you a job as a children's tutor playing music or a house music or, as a musician. So people who are rich have servants. And the richer you are, the better servants you have and the more servants you have. So you have the Woodhouses who have probably two or three people helping out around the house. Mr. Knightley has a couple people. He has a cook, he has a maid, he has a guy who tends his property. So I guess he has three. Plus, he lets out to farmers who kind of work for him, kind of work for themselves. They pay him rent. But anyway, different people have different amounts of money. And Mrs. Elton came from a lot of money. And as we talked before about her brother's two carriages, this is just like stupid amounts of money. So they have a bigger house, and when you have a bigger house, you need more people to clean it. You also eventually you start having people who you pay to play music. And nowadays we have a stereo. So you have the stereo, you have the CD player, you have the little Bluetooth speakers that play Spotify for you. But back in the day you hired a musician. And so these houses, the really fancy ones, would have somebody whose job was dedicated to playing music when the family wanted music. And I mean, this is just like incredible amounts of money. But most likely, she's going to be looking for a job as a music tutor. So she would be brought into the house to teach the children how to play music because music was a skill that was popular among the elites. So it's like, I can play music, and this is how I show off at my fancy parties. And yeah, this is how I show off at my fancy parties. Now, there was one thing that was mentioned that was the slave trade. And you're like, slavery? Well, this book is over 200 years old. It was written in the early 1800s. And slavery wasn't abolished in England until the 1830s. So there were actual literal slaves in England at this time. And some of them came from Africa, and there was a big push to get rid of slavery. And, you know, as I said, this book was written in 1813. 20 years later, slavery was abolished in England. Um, 30 years roughly after that, slavery was abolished in the United States. Slavery was abolished in the United States after the Civil War. So, um, 60 years after this book, slavery was ended in England, in the United States, in Canada. It carried on in the Caribbean and Mexico and South America for a while longer. It carried on in Asia for a while longer. It was finally banned in the last country on the planet, sadly, in the 21st century. So there were places that had slavery 150 years after it had been banned in the United States and banned in England. Um, so, slavery was a real thing, and these were people who didn't have options. It's like, you're a slave and you're going to be a slave forever. Jane mentioned sort of a parallel slavery, all sort of thing, where it's like, okay, there are these agencies that hire out governances, and that's sort of a job thing. It's like you go to the office and they're like, okay, they match make. It's like, okay, this family is looking for a governess for 3 children to teach them math and music. And so they go through the list. It's like, okay, this person can handle 2 children. This person can handle 3. This one's done well with 7. Oh, this one has done 3 children before, does piano, sings, and is excellent at math. Is capable of doing sums and figures. Because at that time, math hadn't really gotten much beyond, well, it had gotten much beyond that, but the math that most people used was algebra and maybe a little bit of trig. But, it's like, so this is what they were looking for. And so you had these businesses which matched them up. And Mrs. Elton was like, oh, no, my brother was against slavery. Slavery is a terrible thing. And this may have been more of an affected thing than an actual firm belief. You never really know. But anyway, so then Mr. Weston comes in with a letter from his son. And Frank is coming back. And it was like, oh, goody, Frank's coming back. Oh, no, Frank's coming back. She's like, I don't know. And, most people are generally happy about this, except for 2. One of them is Mr. Knightley, who didn't like Frank, who thinks he's kind of pompous and kind of a silly person, and Emma's father. And Emma's father perhaps doesn't like the idea because he doesn't like people. He doesn't like having people around, and he knows that if Frank comes to town, then Frank's going to be around, and that's just extra people, and extra people are just too much. Or perhaps he doesn't like the idea because Emma likes the idea, and he's an overprotective father. And he doesn't want to lose his last daughter because his eldest daughter is married to Mr. John Knightley, who's Mr. Knightley's brother. So anyway, we'll see what happens, because Frank is coming back. The boys are back in town.